This episode is brought to you by Resy and American Express. Resy is a digital platform that connects restaurants to restaurant lovers by elevating dining experiences, providing original industry content, and helping to fill some of the country's most exciting dining rooms. Because restaurants have always been more than just places to eat. The amazing world of restaurants is just a few taps away in the Resy app and at resy.com.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
There is this push and pull that I think honestly most of us have. Like, we do want to check out somewhere new and cool and fun. We do want to go back to a place we love, and we all in our minds are able to somehow resolve that. And yet, the list making media machine is still struggling with it.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. John Bonné is Resy's managing editor, a two-time James Beard Award winner, and author of The New French Wine and other books. I always love having John in the studio, and today we talk in detail about the Resy 100, a decisive and illuminating list of restaurants around the United States that define dining today. The list has a very strong point of view and highlights restaurants in both big cities and smaller communities that serve exceptional food that alternately might be comforting or daring, traditional or completely new. It's a fantastic list, and we cover many of the entries while also zooming out to talk about interesting examples of Mexican cuisine, the American Nordic movement, and naturally the modern wine bar scene. I hope you enjoy this episode. John Bonné, welcome back to This Is Taste. How are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm great. I love having you back. You have such a strong mind for restaurants and wine and really just food culture as a whole. So I'm going to take advantage of this time because I have so many questions to ask you. Before we get to the Resy 100, I just want to know, where have you been dining out, John? In New York, in your hometown of Philly now?
New York, where have I been dining out? Karima, which is just, it's just such a compelling, it's all compelling. Opsy's Village, which it's funny, I get a lot of very a full range of thoughts about the pizza, but their tavern pizza, is amazing, and the wine list is amazing, and it's so much fun. And Philly, I will always be hanging with the Superette, Super Foley, Good King folks. Ama is so good, and it's kind of a sleeper hit, but this place Quiche House, which upstairs is sort of Robata kind of, Asian-ish, fusion-ish cocktail situation. Mm-hmm. And downstairs, the omakase chef worked for Jesse Ito, was a chef at Hiroki, was, sort of did the A-list sushi loop in Philly, and is doing this crazy killer omakase that I probably should gatekeep, but I won't because I want everyone to enjoy omakase they can afford. Yeah, it's wonderful to know that Philly has an omakase that you co-sign on, having had them around the world, really. Yeah. What a great city. I mean, I want to have you back to talk only about Philly. We'll do that. Let's do a road trip. Yeah, I would love to do a road trip. I try to make it down many times a year. Let's talk about the Resy 100. Terrific list. Has a really strong point of view. And I love in the intro how you write, quote, "You decline to play when someone wants to indulge in a game of best restaurants because it's our belief that there's only a best restaurant for you." How then did you
come up with 100 restaurants when it's the idea of the best restaurant is so personal.
From like a universe of 10,000, God, like goodness knows how many.
Yeah,
right?
Goodness knows.
So the notion of a best restaurant for you is really one of the North Stars of editorial that we think about a lot, which is that we all know why these lists exist, ours or anyone else's, but when you get into this notion of best, like fair enough, I get it. It's a useful word, but there's first of all, we're getting better, but there's still an awful lot of best meaning kind of fancy, slightly fussy, slightly tweezery, vibe. Like I said, it's getting better, thank goodness. But it's also just there's I really do believe that the strength of American restaurants today, of American dining, is that we found this remarkable diversity, and people are excelling at lots of different things. And some of it is more traditional, some of it is innovative and hybridized, and hyphens colliding, and all of it. And so we felt that there's so much interesting stuff going on out there. The 100 is for sure not a static thing, but you got to pick a number eventually, and we 38 was already taken.
Yeah, bless them over at Vox Media Corp.
But we wanted to really capture, I think, the full sort of diversity of what's going on.
I love it in so many ways, but what I like most about your list of restaurants is that you really lean into restaurants that have been open 2, 5, 10, 18 years. And I think a lot of these lists, sometimes they're called best new, and you have to obviously have a timestamp. But many of these lists, from the New York Times to Bon Appetit to Food and Wine, and I can name all the publications that make lists, they are driven by PR and the buzz created by this kind of apparatus that we have to acknowledge. And this is not against PR. I have friends in PR, and we obviously book the show via representatives. But I think sometimes the PR folks are doing too good of a job with these lists.
I'll say they're doing maybe too efficient of a job.
Okay, that's great. You're a little stronger with it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on to get a lot of people on these lists, is what it is. My time in newspapers gave me what I will argue is a healthy skepticism of those processes. But look, yes, new is great. Says the guy who literally has 3 books with new in the title. But there's even frankly when I was doing, let's say, the new French wine, like new does not fundamentally mean brand new, like it new and shiny. It means that there is a new spirit to it, and for whatever reason in restaurants that doesn't quite translate. You can't directly do that. I mean, when you're saying a new restaurant, it is a new restaurant. But at the same time, how many of us spend our lives just going to new restaurants? And so, yes, of course, it's buzzy, it's new. You want to capture sort of the shiny thing, but that's not actually how our dining lives exist.
Right. Right. And I think we sometimes as diners need to remind ourselves of new 5 years ago and look back. And I think a great example is Lilo Lilo Yacht Club, which is at the top of the Resy 100. And that's a restaurant that's been around for a decade. They took a little bit of a pause during the pandemic. But I remember when BA wrote about them in 2015 on their best new, I was like, I got to go there. This place seems really interesting. I went, I think sometime around 2017. I had a great meal there. But honestly, John, I had forgotten about them. And here they are at the top of the Resy 100. Really, really cool. Tell me about it.
So, I mean, as a former San Franciscan, I always loved to my time there. Ravi Kapoor is an amazing chef.
Yeah.
He was well trained in kind of more formal cooking, but his background is Hawaiian, Chinese, South Asian. Like he brings a lot of his own sort of story to quite literally the table. Jeff Hannock, who is his business partner in it, ran some of the greatest restaurants in San Francisco, including Nopa. So these are for lack of a better term, these are grown-ups.
Yeah.
These are folks who like know how things work, and honestly, being open a decade is an enormous achievement that I think sometimes we forget about. Again, like you focus on the new and you stop thinking about, look, like once those reviews fade into the rear view, once it just kind of becomes BAU, like business as usual, like the restaurant has to go on, and that's a question of how good a job you're doing with the people who keep coming back. And, I would argue that everything going on at Leo, like all of Robbie's cooking, is as innovative and extraordinary today as it was 10 years ago. Like, it's not like it's just, oh, well, everyone's doing kind of neo-Hawaiian with, with their own kind of Bay Area / multi-hued twists, right? Like it's really a place that, that set a bar when it opened, and I think is still there. And, at some point, again, like I am clearly pro-innovation, but at the same time, people who are doing amazing stuff and are continuing to do it. And Chiquito, I would argue, is a good example on this coast, where you're like, that was innovative. It is innovative. And every new Basque place that comes along, like they're finding ways to iterate. But, it was a groundbreaking restaurant, and it is still an incredibly important restaurant that is not – none of the things in either are tired. They're not like, oh, I'm going to go having like, homemade Spam again. I've seen this before.
Yeah. It remains fresh. I mean, you could say the same for Houseman too, staying in New York.
Entirely.
Like in Tribeca, like that's a place that is over a decade old now and has a lot of regulars and locals. But
and Houseman is interesting because it nothing there is wildly groundbreaking, but it is, I think, their menu looks very much like Quo Vadis in London, and that may or may not be intentional, but Quo Vadis, same thing. You're just like, they have figured out the things that they do perfectly, and you see iteratively over and over again subsequent sort of waves of admirers. So Houseman is fascinating because, through, a decade or so of evolution, of different cooks, of different critics, every single one loves it.
Yeah.
It's like it really is this kind of like down low favorite.
Well, I think he cooked at Prune, and I think it's for people who like miss Prune in some ways. And I think a lot of writers like miss Prune, so they go to Houseman instead.
And of the era, Prune was right. Like nothing was groundbreaking, but it was nothing as groundbreaking as Zuni.
Yeah.
But 30 years later, there's you get off the plane in San Francisco and you go of the Zuni chicken because you are allowed to do things that are classics.
Well, I want to also touch on some restaurants that maybe our listeners don't know about, and I've not been to this restaurant. It's called Huckleberry House in North Dakota. Tell me about it.
In Bismarck, yeah. So Chris Tello, Cody Monson, both from North Dakota, wanted to clearly do something that I think paid tribute to their home state. This is a place that is kind of, big, airy, very Scandinavian building on the banks of the Missouri. And it is kind of, you were saying like sort of the other new Nordic, I think this is their take on what sort of like prairie sort of Nordic / German cooking would be if you rolled it forward into the 21st century. And so, it's, I think, they had a sense of like, let's do curried pumpkin dumplings. Let's do, smoked salmon rillette, like a fried pastry with birch sap syrup.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, it's I think having this vision of like, let's be rooted in this place that may not be, it's not New York, it's not Chicago. It is its own place, but it has, frankly, a very long tradition. If you're thinking in terms of sort of Nordic settlers in the Midwest, that like there has been Nordic cooking in this country for a whole lot longer than Rene Redzepi has been alive.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I think it's exploring a different foodway. And North Dakota is especially interesting to me because Marilyn Haggerty, who was had a brief moment of fame. She was a restaurant critic in Grand Forks who I think caught a fair amount of mockery for reviewing the Olive Garden, and then was uplifted quite rightly by Anthony Bourdain, who, realized that, there's a much deeper and more textured food life in this country than we tend to give credit for. Again, to this notion of best new, and so you have to look for interesting, great things that people are doing wherever they're doing.
Yeah, and I noticed that right away looking at the list, that this is not a coastal elite list by any means, and you really did the work to kind of span across the country. Includes Portland, Maine. Kong Tu Bat is there. It's a restaurant that specializes in pho and other Vietnamese staple dishes, but there's definitely some twists going on. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so this is it's been around again for certainly since pre-pandemic. So Vien Dui and Jessica Sheehan, I think they wanted to do kind of their sort of zany, very colorful, very outre take on starting kind of as a pho place, but evolving from there. And so, Tam Tam in Miami, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. This notion of let's do a Vietnamese style party, and just make it our own and make it fun, and reflect kind of the aesthetics of the current generation. So they were into that as well. But Portland, Maine is maybe a little bit less obvious of a place to do it. But they're having a blast. They're doing Rancho Gordo beans in a turmeric lemongrass curry.
Sounds delicious.
Which honestly, if you found that in New York, you'd be like, this is pretty rad.
Yeah.
And honestly, with the whole list, it kept being discoveries where you're like, this is really innovative and really thoughtful, and folks who are, again, bringing their threads with them, but not simply saying, I'm gonna make the quintessential pho. I'm going to make the quintessential,
Bonseo or something,
right? Yeah. So it's super exciting. And now they just opened a Cambodian place as well. So I
wonderful.
love, it's again, it's seeing, I think, that there are these cities, and I mean, I think we had at least 40 cities across the list, where there's dynamism, and there's this usually young but not always. Kind of up and coming cohort of chefs and restaurateurs who are just when you honestly, and we've talked about this before, when you take some of the New York, LA economics out of it, and you let people innovate somewhere that they can actually afford to run a restaurant, they can afford to take risks. I think you see just how deep the innovation in American cooking is.
And I think I'm linking to the article in the show notes. You got to read it, because John, what you've done, you wrote it. It's 15,000 words. It's quite
with a lot of help from all our study.
Yeah, no, it's definitely using a lot of outside voices and editorial, your team. But you're tossing to other restaurants within each restaurant write up. So I think you're getting a little snapshot of a community, and as you just mentioned, they're opening a new place. Well, it's mentioned there in the writing, and it's why it's worth reading. It's not just always about the restaurant, and it's great journalism. I want to stay in the Northeast, and I loved seeing this restaurant come up, Myers and Chang. 18 years it's been operating in Boston, and it's one of those restaurants that is a classic. I read some reviews, and I think the community of Boston is behind it, but it's not the new darling of Boston anymore. And it's great to be reminded about Myers and Chang. I had a great meal there a decade ago, and now when I go to Boston, I'm like, I got to go to Myers and Chang.
There you go. And it's funny. So it's kind of in the walk-off slot, and I was a little bit deliberate, because I was sort of I want to, kind of starting with Leo, I felt it was important that we remind people that, great talent and again, innovation, it doesn't suddenly go away because you celebrate your 3rd anniversary or your 5th anniversary, right? So you think about what Joanne Chang did when she launched, and it was it was crazy at the time. It was here's this Harvard educated consultant who wants to become a baker and then a chef, and just builds this amazing ecosystem, again, drawing on her threads but also her interests, and just acknowledging that she wanted to make the food that she and her husband wanted to make. And it was innovative then. And like you look at the menu now and you're like, well, this feels kind of familiar. And the reason it feels familiar is that it has informed so many other restaurants that have come in its wake. And it opened the door for a lot of other people to start to be able to explore that and to feel that they had license to make food that was for them personal and that brought new threads to the dining conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting as a diner, you sometimes when you see this name that looks familiar, you almost have to like pump yourself up to go there because it's not the new place. It's not the place that got that 3-star New York Times last weekend. It's like the one that's been there forever. And like there's this inherent bias as a diner that it's been around for 10 years, it must be dated. But your list goes against this argument, goes against this thread so well.
And look, like there are plenty of restaurants that do get dated.
Yes.
And there are reasons
Fair.
that restaurants need refreshes and whatever. Like, but I was just at Pesh in New Orleans not long ago, and it's really fascinating. You're like, first of all, they've obviously like polished things up, a little bit over time, but you're like, for a restaurant that's been around basically, like 15 years, this is still looking pretty spiffy, pretty fresh. Everything is on point. Staff is amazing. Food is amazing. You're just like, to your point. Yeah, I mean, yes, you have to stay in the game, but at the same time, I think it becomes difficult because even in the absolute heyday of food media, there was never really a framework to keep acknowledging great restaurants.
Beards is the only one really because of their, outstanding restaurant requiring time, but that's like it's an awards organization. That's not an editorial outlet. You're so right. There wasn't the way we would call them legends, but that's kind of unfair too.
So weirdly, the one other organization that has done this for better or worse, and one can debate their prism, is Michelin.
Yeah,
and there is this sense with Michelin, and I think even there you sense their need to kind of keep looking for new. But the original concept of the stars and the bibs and everything after was you earn that over time, and there is something to be said. Again, regardless of sort of the specific choices, there is something to be said for earning those stripes over time
and defending them. I mean, the term "defend" is always used with Michelin, and defending means that longevity, and you need to like continue operating at a high level, but also you need to keep going there and giving feedback, and the inspectors need to keep going there.
Yeah, and my question would be, you think about the criticisms of where chefs, specifically French chefs, felt enormous pressure within the system, which is obviously not the good part. But you're like, there's got to be a sustainable version of this where you are allowed to keep being great and keep being recognized for it. And I mean, look, the ultimate recognition is people are continuing to come through your door. But it would, I think, again, we want to at least dip our toe into how do you start to provide this ongoing recognition? How do you lift up places that maybe they've been doing great work for 6 months, maybe they've been doing it for 15 years, but it's important to acknowledge that both those things can exist on a spectrum.
John, today's episode of This Is Taste is brought to you by Grow Therapy. Have you ever tried to Google therapist near me and ended up more anxious than when you started? Now, I did this once and landed on some guy in Brooklyn Heights who wanted to charge me $900 for a session. Now, I get that brownstone living is expensive, and those weekly visits to Lavara, those can add up. But come on, man, $900? Grow Therapy makes it way less overwhelming and way more affordable. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits your needs. They connect you with thousands of independent, licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. It's that easy. And you can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your own time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0, depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/taste today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/taste. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Hey, Talkhouse Network listeners, I'm Jad Abumrad. You may know me from Radiolab or Dolly Parton's America. I'm here to tell you about my new show, Higher Ground's latest music podcast, called Fela Kuti Fear No Man. In a world that's on fire, what do we do with art? Like music, is it just there to distract us? Or can a song actually change the world? I'm Jad Abumrad. In this series, we dive into the life and the music of Fela Kuti, the fiercest musical warrior that ever was. And I'm not the only one who thinks this.
But Fela has to be the epicenter.
Questlove,
the passion, the pain,
Jay-Z,
the need to get the message out there.
Beyonce quoted Fela on one of her albums.
He invited me out to his club just outside Lagos.
And then there is Paul McCartney, Sir Paul. He tells the story of seeing Fela play.
And when this music broke, I ended up just weeping.
We'll tell you about his life, ignite a youth movement, dive into hidden archives to find out what does rebellion look like, sound like, when the weapon is not guns, but music. Join us for Fela Kuti Fear No Man, wherever you get your podcasts.
You live in Philadelphia, and you had to make some choices, some tough choices in spearheading this list. You landed on Southwark, which is a restaurant I was honestly unfamiliar with, which I love about all lists. I've had many editors on at all the major pubs talking about lists, and when me as a writer is exposed to a new restaurant on the list, I think you have done your job. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, and look, there was, I mean, yes, I would have given even more love to Philly if I could have. I mean,
Right.
like Irwin's is on because like
Yep.
when Michael does there is amazing. Meeting House is on,
Yep.
Which again, you're like, it's, on one hand, people are like, it's kind of like bar doing bar food. And you're like, yeah, but you have a chef who could literally be cooking at the best restaurant in town, who decided he wanted to make like the world's most perfect roast beef sandwich.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm here for that.
Wonderful. So am I.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the thing with Southwark is like you talk to folks in Philly, you talk to folks in the industry in Philly, and over and over again, that is the restaurant that comes up. And that to me is always the sign. I'm trying to think, I mean, kind of Prune was that in New York. In some ways, Houseman is that. Like it's a place that gets respect from peers.
Yeah.
And in its case for 20 years now. And like food is amazing. They also have another place, Ambra, which is a little newer, more sort of specifically Italian, more kind of tasting menu-y. But like cocktail program is amazing. Jamie Rubin is does the wine, is like one of the best sort of wine directors in town. Again, one of these people who's just like universally respected. Mm-hmm. And you're like, this is the pro game, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's one of these things where it's, I think, people who know it and keep going are delighted, and and people who don't know it, the hope is this is a moment to get to explore it and to give full credit. That was a pick from Sarah Maiolano, who's our Philly hit list writer.
Yeah.
And amazing, kind of like honestly, Myers and Chang was nominated by Eric Twardzik, who's our Boston writer, and so some of this is I wouldn't even say that I'd like to think I'm that smart. I'm.
Well, I love that you're giving credit to your team.
I am lifted up by a tremendous team of writers that we work with, and so honestly, a lot of these in our key cities were just great recommendations from the writers we work with, who again, like they know the city super well, they know the level below the level, and so yeah, it was. I mean, they made my job honestly kind of easy.
Yeah, it's that's why the list is terrific. It's a real group effort. You write about this interesting dialogue between chefs of Mexican heritage and the food that interests them. You cite restaurants like Lele in Encinitas, California, Work and Class in Denver, Casa Susana in the Catskills, and Basso in Houston. I want to hear more about this dialogue, this discourse. It's not necessarily traditional Oaxacan cuisine. It's maybe something a little different, something more American.
Yeah. American, or I mean, so Layla is interesting because Claudette Zepeda, like she just brought all kinds of stuff in.
Yeah.
Like, whipped feta with a celery ceviche, right? I mean, you look at the dip section and you're like, well, this could be like a Mike Solomonov jam at Zahav. And obviously there's things that are a little bit more kind of coastal Mexican, but it's very much, I think, her view, and this is like a top chef, but bringing really, I think, a remarkable sort of, like very personal perspective to it. Casa Susana, it was fast because Robert Seaton was actually, I think, the one who like really tapped into like this remarkable Mexican cooking up in the Catskills at a like Catskills resort. Great
I've
brunch.
been there. And I went up through beard voting, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like it's a kind of place that captures this really precise Mexican coastal cooking. There's a lot of seafood on the menu. They have a nixtamalization program right there. But you're like in the middle of nowhere in the Catskills in this kind of very cozy vibe. And to me, it's great that you call them out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think especially in our current times, and I'll leave it that way, it's really important to recognize that like this quality of cooking and this diversity of cooking is happening everywhere. And so like Working Class, to your point in Denver, I mean, it is, she's from Chihuahua, but it's also like it's very Coloradan, and it reminds you that, that Colorado has these deep sort of Mexican roots in its history. It's very Southwestern in its way. It's very Western. It's also just like a bar. Basso in Houston, which is a Basque live fire restaurant from two Jewish Mexican chefs who met cooking in L.A. Also in Houston is Kira, which is sort of hand rolls, sushi hand rolls, and the sushi chefs are both Mexican, worked at Uchi, which again has become this great incubator and like bring kind of their own perspective. I would also add Valentine and Phoenix, which is Sonoran cooking, but like Sonoran is actually one of these really remarkable foodways where the Sonoran Desert has this incredible bounty, Sonoran winter wheat, beans, like all kinds of stuff. And so there's, I think, quite honestly, to be a little blunt about it, we forget how much of the kitchen workforce in America at every level is Mexican. And so it is entirely reasonable that a great Mexican-American chef is going to want to cook all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. And Sonoran food is so amazing. I was in Tucson and had Sonoran-style tortillas using that wheat, and it's its own thing. I mean, it's definitely contrast to the corn tortillas we might get in LA and street tacos. And
I mean, I honestly, I think everyone should honestly just go and eat in Tucson because it is eye-opening, and even more if you can like go south, kind of out into the desert, like towards Sonoita, and just like you see that this is again, this isn't actually like new. This is very, very traditional food. That's just been, that's been kind of brought forward and innovated, and people are finding new ways to explore it.
I mean, Working Class has been around for 11 years, and it's just great to see, again, these restaurants that maybe aren't getting as much press as their newer peers. And when you rolled this out, I just saw on social, I mean, so many smiling faces getting this recognition on Resy 100. I think it's such a cool idea to surface an 11-year-old restaurant that, locally in Denver, of course, it's making lists and it's covered. But, we're here in New York City talking about Working Class. It's something special about that. Yeah,
I mean, look, it's like I said, great food remains great food. And I think, again, I am all about chasing the new. But there was a point where I was going through this where I really did have to sort of reflect back on like, how do I eat? With hopefully not being, the boring guy who just goes back to his local, although there's plenty of that.
Oh, yeah.
But But there is this push and pull that I think honestly most of us have. Like, we do want to check out somewhere new and cool and fun. We do want to go back to a place we love, and we all in our minds are able to somehow resolve that, and yet the list making media machine is still struggling with it.
I talk about it a lot on the show, John. I mean, I think you got to make that list and have it on your phone of restaurants that have been open 2 to 5 years, and go back. Just go back to these restaurants when you're struggling to find a reservation at a new buzzy place. Just go back to that list. Like, make it a practice. Like, make the five restaurants that you've been to 1 or 3 times, just as a reminder. It'll be refreshing to go back to that list, review it, and then book there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was at Red Hook Tavern.
Yeah,
I don't know, last week, I think.
Yeah, great example.
And, I mean, to their full credit, it is still plenty hard to get a seat there. But you're like, look, like, they're literally doing amazing burger, amazing shrimp cocktail. Like, there's a little like Wright's Tavern in St. Louis where you're like, look, it's a great steakhouse. And it's honestly, it's still like one of the most in-demand restaurants in St. Louis. And it's not because, like it's out there. It's because, they've created this perfect place that people love and they want to come back to and they feel is special to them. And, and that's, I mean, that is a tradition in restaurateurship that I would argue predates kind of most of the accolades we're talking about.
John, I think we need to talk about wine bars. I feel like you being here. Do we? I mean, last time you were on the show, you had some great thoughts about wine bars and kind of some push and pull with a newer generation of wine bar. Maybe you weren't loving all of them. Perhaps we'll review that episode. But really, right now, you are seeing some movements in wine bars. I'd love to really get your take.
Yeah. It will probably not be a huge surprise that there were a fair number of wine-focused restaurants within the 100. But some of that is also that there's been, I mean, I remember at least 3 rounds of like 2009, 2006, probably 2015. Like, there's, it's like a lunar cycle. It's like you've got to talk about wine bars being a thing like every 5 to 7 years, like more often than the locusts come.
Is it a thing now then?
It is a thing now. So I think the difference right now is this thing of like, is it a wine bar or a wine-focused restaurant is just like that push and pull has gone away a little bit. And I think you see like there's ever more places where they're kind of cool with wherever you want to land on that spectrum. And that was always tricky because, the thing with the wine bar, I remember talking to like Paul Greco at Terroir about this, is like, like people come, they sit for 45 minutes over a glass of wine and maybe they get like a thing of popcorn. And it's just, as a business model, it's really hard. And I think that it's evolved in a way that, first of all, whatever people want to say about drinking less, I would argue that at least for the people who are enjoying wine, they are definitely not lingering forever over that one glass. They've embraced the Parisian way of just like
I mean, Gen
going
Z,
at it.
you could say drinks less. Maybe that's the high level data, but when you get into the cohort of Gen Z with spending money and really
Gen Z
disposable
with
income,
mortgages,
mortgages, they're drinking some wines and they're learning about wine, and you're seeing it in real time. This education is transferring to the support of these wine bars.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think it's also, I mean, we had, there was Kid Sister in Phoenix, there was Heavenly Creatures in Portland, Place des Fêtes, which is sort of this great, somewhere, again, like, is it a wine bar? Is it a neo bistro? Is it both? Does it matter? In Brooklyn.
A great reminder about Place des Fêtes.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, or like Cactus Wren, which is the 69 Leonard guys doing their thing with a wine bar, or Madeira Park in Atlanta. So Steven Satterfield has had Miller Union for like almost 2 decades, and decided, that's always, his business partner Neil has always made one of the great curators of wine programs, and it's like, opening a wine bar, and Bar Étoile, Jill Bernheimer, who really pioneered natural wine at
her
Main
shop,
LA. Kind of finally entering the restaurant space. And so it's just like, I mean, I honestly need to sort of get to the bottom of it, but clearly something coalesced for these people who are very, very knowledgeable both about wine and about restaurants to feel like there was a time that they could build a space that was wine focused again.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that perhaps as a hypothesis to poke at, Do you think like wine shop owners just started dining out more and just like understanding restaurant culture, and perhaps that energy was transferred into these wine bars?
I mean, the one thing that I think is very true within the wine industry right now is that off-premise, so retail, is struggling.
Yeah.
And there's many facets to that. But in part, it's because people are drinking more wine in restaurants, which I will never be upset at. So when I moved to Philly, I actually sold a fair amount of wine from my – it's hard to call anything in New York a cellar, but whatever.
Your collection.
My wine fridge. Because I was just like, look, like I mean, there was a time in my life as, someone who is deeply invested in wine culturally that I wanted to like, have all the important bottles and have all my special bottles for a rainy day or whatever. And at some point you're like, you know what? I just want to go out and buy a bottle of wine off of someone's list and enjoy it. And if you can like meet me at a price that I can make that work, I am happy to, to just not like to hand that off. And to your point about Gen Z, and I would argue it's not just Gen Z, it's, millennials, Gen X. Like I think in general, people are just like, look, like we want to go and explore things and we want to be curious and drink fun things. It doesn't have to be this like big important thing that I'm buying to, store at home. Like I'm just going to go out and enjoy it. And I think what goes with that as well is we finally kind of gotten to this, I don't even want to call it a sommelier culture, but a wine professional culture in restaurants. It's like, it's not about having, whose list is biggest. It's not about, your Testavan, your, all your fancy toys, whatever. Like, it's just, it is, when we talked last, I was like, I want 10% more education in the hipsterdom. And I think actually, like, for a lot of these places, that's exactly where we've landed.
They were listening.
We've got really, really remarkable professionals who are just having fun. So like Smithereens in New York, which again is like, it's not a wine bar. It is very much a restaurant. But Nikita, who's their wine director and one of the partners, like her previous gig was at Momofuku Co.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's not like she doesn't know how to buy super fancy wine and do all the fancy things, but she's just found a place kind of like, their friends at Claude and Penny where like, they're having fun with serving really serious wine to people who are just loving it.
And I think that you have to credit the diners, because I think your frustration was possibly a fake it till you make it mentality with wine service when we spoke about a year and a half ago. And diners just became smarter about wine and weren't accepting this like vibesy wine list. There needed to be real education and data points on those lists and real wine service in these wine bar restaurants. And
I mean, there's still plenty of vibesy wine lists around. But I will say there's also like, there's vibesy wine lists that have sort of like, they've got this secret backbone to them. And actually that to me is sort of the most fun. It's like, you're having a blast, but you know exactly what you're doing, and you like, this is truly thoughtful, and then as a nerd I can come here and and be super into it, and I can bring my my super serious friends. I mean, last night literally was at Barbette.
Wonderful. On the list too.
And
Carroll Gardens.
And Nick Ferrante again, like alum of Terroir, and so like he's a guy who's just like doing his thing. He, you'll never get this sommelier vibe at all. But he's, and I brought a friend who's, a wine professional from Paris who's stunned. Cool. Like this exists in New York at all, and certainly at this little Neo Bistro in Brooklyn. And so again, I think, for the moment, I would argue we found this perfect little Goldilocks moment. I'm gonna cherish it as long as it's there.
Let's put it in a bottle.
Yeah.
Let's protect it, John. Let's protect it. What's the future of the list going to be? I really, you mentioned it briefly at the opening, but it sounds like you're going to continue to publish this, evolve it. Is it an annual list?
A little bit TBD.
Okay.
I think right now the vision is we might try to do quarterly updates.
I like that.
We were doing a different list, which is kind of the 40 restaurants across America worth a visit that we still are doing, and is a little bit more travel focused, but that's getting quarterly updates, and so potentially we'll do this as well. Maybe it'll be every 6 months, maybe it'll be a year. I like, to the extent that it's feasible, I like being able to keep it a little bit more fluid, and again, like, there's a lot of great restaurants out there, and I think obviously debuting it feels like it's, I don't know, it should be eternal, but I do want it to be a living thing.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. And I think, once again, so many restaurants out there in non-coastal markets, and to highlight them on the Resy 100 that evolves 6 months a year, however you decide. I cannot wait to keep checking back at the Resy 100. John Bonné, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Always a pleasure.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanal and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.